Harry had his invisibility cloak pulled tight around his shoulders. The winter air bit at his cheeks anyway. It still found a way in. Beside him, Ron's breath came out in shaky clouds. "Why are we even out here?" Ron whispered. "Because she's watching every hallway," Hermione whispered back. "And because you said you saw a light near the forest." Harry kept his eyes on the grounds. Hogwarts was quiet, but it was not safe quiet. It was the kind of quiet that came from rules and fear. Umbridge had done that. She made even the castle feel like it was holding its breath. They moved along the edge of the lawn, keeping low. The black shape of the forbidden forest waited like a wall. Then the sky cracked. It was not thunder first, it was light. A tall column of it stabbed down from the clouds, straight onto the grass near the lake. It was bright and strange, with colors that did not belong in the night. Harry's heart jumped into his throat. Ron let out a small sound, like he almost yelled but swallowed it. Hermione's hand clamped on Harry's sleeve so hard it hurt. The air buzzed. Harry felt it in his teeth. Wind slammed outward. The cloak snapped against Harry's legs. For a second, he thought he would be blown off his feet. Then something hit the ground, not like a person falling, like a giant hammer. The grass flattened, dirt puffed up in a ring. The lake water slapped against the shore like it was startled. Harry stared. A man stood in the middle of the crater. He was tall, taller than any student, taller than most adults. He wore dark armor that caught the light. A red cape hung from his shoulders. In one hand, he held a weapon with a long handle and a heavy head. It looked like an axe, but it felt older, like it belonged in a story. Lightning crawled over his arms and shoulders, not random sparks. It moved like it listened to him. The man lifted his head and looked around. His face was serious. His eyes were bright in the strange light. He looked angry for half a second, like he expected enemies to be waiting. Then he saw the castle. He stopped moving. The anger eased into something else. Not fear, not confusion. More like respect. He took a slow breath. His shoulders lowered a little. Harry couldn't stop staring. This did not feel like a wizard. It did not feel like any creature he had seen. It felt like a storm learned how to stand up straight. The rainbow light above him started to thin, like a door closing. The man turned and looked up at it. "No," he said, loud and clear, like he was talking to the sky itself. The light snapped shut. Night returned, but the air still hummed. For one quiet second, nobody moved. Then the castle reacted. A wave of magic pushed out from the walls. Harry felt it like pressure in his chest. Torches along the battlements flared. Windows glinted. Statues near the entrance scraped and shifted, as if they were waking up. The man's head turned sharply toward the front doors. He raised, his weapon, not swinging, just ready. "Show yourself," he called. Harry's stomach tightened. The man's voice was not a teacher's voice. It was a commander's voice. Footsteps came fast across the stone path. Professor McGonagall reached the lawn first, robes snapping. Her wand was already up. Behind her, Professor Snape moved like a shadow. His eyes were flat and cold. His wand pointed right at the man's chest. And behind them, Hagrid thundered down the slope, crossbow in hand, eyes wide. "What in blazes?" Hagrid began, then stopped when he saw the size of the man and the weapon. McGonagall's voice cut through the night. "Do not move," she said. The man stared at her wand, like it was a strange kind of dagger. He did not lower his weapon. "I am not your enemy," he said. Snape's lip curled. That is exactly what enemies say. The man's jaw tightened. Lightning flickered once, brighter, and the grass around his boots steamed. Harry saw McGonagall's eyes sharpen. She was not scared, but she was not careless either. "State your name," she demanded. The man hesitated, like he was deciding how honest to be. Then he lifted his chin. "I am Thor." Ron's mouth fell open under the cloak. Hermione's eyes went even wider. Harry felt the name hit him in a strange way. Not like Tom Riddle. Not like Sirius Black. This sounded like something out of a Muggle storybook. A myth. McGonagall did not blink. "Thor," she repeated. Flat. "Yes," Thor said. "Thor Odinson." Snape's wand hand tightened. "And how?" Snape said softly. "Did you enter Hogwarts grounds?" Thor looked at the sky again, like he expected the door to still be there. "A bridge of light," he said. "It brought me here. It should not have." McGonagall took one step closer, careful. "You will come with us," she said. "Now." Thor's eyes flicked to the castle, then to the lake, then to the forest. Like he was mapping exits. Like he was measuring danger. Then his gaze landed, just for a second, on the place where Harry stood hidden. Harry's breath stopped. Thor's eyes narrowed, not angry. Curious. Like he could sense the shape of people even when he could not see them. Harry felt like a lantern had been pointed at his face, but Thor did not call him out. Instead, Thor lowered his weapon a few inches. "Very well," he said. "Lead. But understand this. If you attack me, I will defend myself." Hagrid swallowed. McGonagall's mouth tightened. "That is not a threat I advise you to make on school grounds." Thor looked at her, then gave a short nod. "It is not a threat," he said. "It is a fact." As they guided him toward the castle, Harry felt the hairs on his arms stay raised. And far away, deep beneath London, inside a room full of strange objects and quiet spells, a needle on a glass dial jumped hard to the right. In a dark place where no light was welcome, Lord Voldemort paused, mid-thought. He lifted his head, smiling slowly. "Someone has opened a door," he whispered. Dumbledore's office smelled like old books and lemon candy. The walls were lined with portraits that pretended to sleep. Fawkes the Phoenix watched from his perch, head tilted. Thor stood in the middle of the room, like the furniture had been built too small. He did not fidget. He did not pace. He held still in a way that made Harry think of a soldier waiting for orders. Harry stood near the door with Ron and Hermione. Professor McGonagall had ordered them to stay quiet. She had also said, very clearly, that they were not to talk about any of this to anyone. Which, Harry thought, usually meant it was going to spread through the whole school by breakfast. Snape leaned against the wall with his arms folded. His eyes never left Thor. Dumbledore sat behind his desk, fingers steepled. He did not look tense. He looked interested, as if a rare bird had flown through his window. "My dear guest," Dumbledore said, voice warm. "Welcome to Hogwarts." Thor's gaze moved across the room. It stopped on the sorting hat, then on the silver instruments ticking and spinning on the shelves, then on the sword in the display case. "You have weapons," Thor said. "We have history," Dumbledore replied. "Often, those are the same thing." Thor's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Almost. McGonagall spoke before Snape could. "Headmaster, he arrived on the grounds without warning. He carries an unknown weapon. He claims to be." She looked at Thor like she did not enjoy saying the name. "Thor. Thor Odinson," Thor corrected, polite but firm. Dumbledore nodded once, like he accepted the correction as important. "And you say you did not choose to come here," Dumbledore said. "I did not," Thor replied. "I was in battle. Then the bridge took me. It should have taken me elsewhere." "Battle," Snape echoed, and there was a sharp edge in the word. "With whom?" Thor looked at Snape, and for a second, Harry felt the temperature in the room shift. With Snape, the danger always felt like a knife. With Thor, the danger felt like weather. "Creatures," Thor said. "Armies. Beings that would crush your world if they could reach it." Ron swallowed audibly. Hermione's eyes flicked to Dumbledore, like she wanted permission to ask 1,000 questions. Dumbledore only said, "And what is this bridge?" Thor's eyes went distant for a moment. "It is called the Bifrost," he said. "It is how my people travel between realms." "Realms," McGonagall repeated, dry. "Yes," Thor said, as if that explained everything. Dumbledore's gaze sharpened, but his tone stayed gentle. "Then you believe our world is another realm?" Thor nodded once. "It feels different. The air, the power in the stones, the way your castle watches." Harry blinked. Did the castle watch? Then he remembered the moving stairs, the shifting doors, the way the castle sometimes seemed to help and sometimes seemed to test. Maybe Thor was right. Dumbledore stood. Even standing, he looked small next to Thor. But the room still felt like Dumbledore was the one in control. "I would like to understand you," Dumbledore said. "And I would like you to understand us." Thor's shoulders loosened a fraction. "Good. Then we speak as honorable leaders." Snape made a soft sound that could have been a laugh if Snape's face had ever allowed it. "Honor," Snape said. "How refreshing." Thor's eyes narrowed. "You mock what you do not value." "I mock what people use to excuse their actions," Snape replied, voice smooth. "Men who say, 'honor,' often mean I did what I wanted." Thor's lightning flickered, quick and bright, like a warning. Harry tensed. Dumbledore lifted one hand. "Peace," he said softly. The flicker died down. Thor exhaled through his nose, like he had pulled a storm back into a bottle. Dumbledore turned slightly to Flitwick, who had entered quietly and now stood near a table with several objects laid out. Feathers, a small stone, a glass of water. "Professor Flitwick," Dumbledore said, "perhaps we can begin with something simple." Flitwick nodded. He looked both excited and nervous, like a man invited to poke a dragon with a stick. "If you will allow it," Flitwick said to Thor, "I would like to test a few harmless charms, purely to see how your body reacts to magic." Thor glanced at the wand, then at Dumbledore. "Your magic is like a weapon?" Thor asked. "It can be," Dumbledore said. "Or a tool. It depends on the hand that holds it." Thor nodded, as if he understood that perfectly. "Very well," Thor said, "but I will not be treated like a prisoner." McGonagall said, "Then behave like a guest." Thor looked at her, then gave a short bow from the neck. It was stiff, like he was trying hard to be respectful in a place with rules he did not know. Flitwick raised his wand. "Levitation charm," he said. "Wingardium Leviosa." The feather rose smoothly into the air. It floated, spinning. Ron's face relaxed a bit, like this was normal again. Flitwick then aimed at the small stone. The stone lifted too. Then Flitwick aimed at Thor. Harry almost held his breath without meaning to. "Wingardium Leviosa," Flitwick said. Nothing happened. Not even a wobble. Flitwick blinked. "Ah." He tried again. The air around Thor shimmered slightly, like the charm touched him and slid off. Thor looked down at his boots. "You cannot lift me," he said. Not as a brag, just stating it. Flitwick cleared his throat. "Apparently not." Ron made a strangled noise that sounded like he wanted to laugh and was afraid it would be rude. Hermione's eyes lit up in a way Harry recognized. She was already building a theory in her head. Snape's expression did not change, but his eyes sharpened more. Flitwick tried a mild, warming charm. Thor's cape fluttered, then settled. Thor did not even seem to notice. Flitwick tried a soft, binding charm, like invisible rope. The ropes formed around Thor's arms. Thor looked down at them, almost curious. Then he flexed. The ropes snapped like threads. McGonagall's jaw tightened. "Enough," she said. Thor turned his head. "You fear me." I fear what you could do here if you decided you wanted to, McGonagall replied. Thor's face went still. I've been a fool before, he said quietly. I have paid for it. I do not wish to pay again. Dumbledore's eyes softened. That is surprisingly honest. It is only honest, Thor said. Snape stepped away from the wall. I have a question, Snape said. Dumbledore did not stop him. That alone told Harry Snape's question mattered. Snape came closer, wand down at his side, like he was trying to look casual. Your mind, Snape said. Is it protected, or is it simply empty of thought? Ron's eyebrows shot up. Hermione looked angry at once. Thor's eyes went hard. You insult me. I test you, Snape corrected. Before anyone could move, Snape's eyes locked with Thor's. Harry felt something cold brush the room. Not like Dementors. Different. Like someone trying to open a door inside your head. Thor's gaze did not flinch. For a second, nothing happened. Then the candles in the office guttered like a wind had passed through them. A low rumble rolled under the floorboards, as if thunder had been trapped beneath the castle. Snape's face tightened. He took one involuntary step back. His eyes flicked away. Harry saw it. Just for half a heartbeat. Snape looked shaken. Thor did not move. He only said very calmly, "Do not do that again." Snape's nostrils flared. He regained his mask in the next second, but Harry had already seen the crack. Dumbledore's voice stayed calm. That will be enough, he said. Snape's gaze slid to Dumbledore. His mind is not like ours. Thor's mouth twitched again, not quite a smile. I told you, I am not from here. Dumbledore nodded. And that is the heart of our problem. Harry's scar prickled suddenly, sharp and quick. He froze. It passed, but it left him with a cold, sinking feeling. Hermione noticed his face at once. She leaned close and whispered, Harry, what is it? Harry shook his head slightly. Not now. Dumbledore turned his attention back to Thor. Tell me, Dumbledore said, why should we trust you? Thor looked at the old wizard for a long moment. Then he did something Harry did not expect. He set his weapon down. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. The sound felt final. I do not ask for trust as a gift, Thor said. I ask for a chance to earn it. McGonagall's eyes narrowed. And how do you plan to earn it? Thor glanced at Harry, Ron, and Hermione. His gaze lingered on them like he could tell they mattered. By protecting, you're young, Thor said. This is a place of children. McGonagall's mouth tightened. This is a place of students. Thor nodded. Children who are forced to be brave. For a second, the room went very quiet. Even Snape did not speak. Dumbledore's expression did not change much, but something behind his eyes did. You understand more than I expected, Dumbledore said. Thor's voice lowered. In my world, I thought strength solved everything. I learned it does not. Harry felt that land in his chest. He knew what it was like to learn hard lessons too early. Dumbledore moved to the window and looked down at the dark grounds. You cannot remain a secret for long, Dumbledore said. The Ministry will notice. And there are other eyes in this world. Thor picked up on that instantly. An enemy, Thor said. Dumbledore did not answer directly. A dangerous man. A strong one. A patient one. Harry's scar prickled again, softer this time, like a warning. Thor's hand tightened on his weapon's handle, but he did not lift it. I will face him, Thor said, like it was the simplest thing. That is not always wise, Dumbledore replied. Thor looked confused. If there is a threat, you meet it. You do, Dumbledore said, and sometimes you lose what you are trying to save. Thor's face shifted. He did not like that answer. But he listened. McGonagall cleared her throat. "Headmaster," she said, "what do we do with him? We cannot place him in a dormitory." Thor frowned. "Dormitory. A sleeping room," Hermione whispered under her breath, unable to stop herself. Thor glanced at her. "Ah." Hermione straightened, cheeks pink. "Sorry." Thor studied her like she was a puzzle he respected. Dumbledore smiled. "For now, he will remain under my protection. There are rooms in the castle that have been unused for a very long time." Snape's eyes narrowed. "And if he decides to leave?" Thor spoke before Dumbledore could. "Then I will tell you," Thor said, firm. "I will not slink like a thief in your halls." That made Ron let out a short, surprised laugh. McGonagall shot Ron a look that could cut stone. Ron swallowed the laugh and looked at his shoes. Dumbledore's gaze drifted to the three of them. "I suspect," Dumbledore said mildly, "that our visitors will have questions." Hermione looked like she might explode if nobody let her ask. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. "Miss Granger," Hermione stood a little straighter. "Sir." He said his name is Thor. Thor is a name from Norse mythology. "In Muggle stories, Thor is the god of thunder," Ron whispered. "Muggle stories?" Hermione ignored him. She looked at Thor, cautious but excited. "Are you that Thor?" Thor blinked. "There are stories of me here?" Hermione nodded fast. "Yes, in books. Very old stories." Thor's face did something strange. He looked proud for half a second. Then he looked tired. "Stories grow," he said. "They change. But yes, it is me." Ron stared. A god. Harry watched Thor closely. Thor did not act like he wanted them to bow. He acted like being called a god was a weight. Dumbledore's voice was gentle. "Thank you, Miss Granger." Hermione sat back down slowly, eyes still locked on Thor. Ron leaned toward Harry and whispered, "We're going to die, aren't we?" Harry whispered back, "Not if he's on our side." Ron swallowed. McGonagall said, "If he is a god, he is not under the Ministry's laws." Snape's voice slid in, quiet and dangerous. "The Ministry will not care. They will care that they cannot control him." Dumbledore nodded once. "Precisely." As if summoned by the words, a knock sounded at the office door. Sharp. Official. McGonagall's spine stiffened. Dumbledore did not look surprised. "Enter," he called. The door opened, and Dolores Umbridge stepped in, smiling as if she owned the room. She wore pink. She always wore pink. Harry hated how normal she looked next to the danger she carried. Her eyes moved across the room and landed on Thor. Her smile widened. "Oh my," she said, voice sugary. "So the rumors were true." Thor looked at her like she was a small animal making a loud noise. "And you are?" Thor asked. Umbridge gave a tiny laugh. "I am Senior Undersecretary to the Minister of Magic and High Inquisitor of Hogwarts." Thor frowned. "That is many titles." "Yes," Umbridge said brightly. "Titles are important." Thor's eyes flicked to Dumbledore. "Is she your queen?" Umbridge's smile twitched. Dumbledore coughed softly, like he was covering a laugh. "No," Dumbledore said. "Professor Umbridge represents the Ministry." Thor nodded once. "Then she is a messenger." Umbridge's eyes sharpened. "I am," she said, still sweet. "A great deal more than a messenger." She took a step closer, looking Thor up and down like he was a thing to label. "Name?" Umbridge asked, pulling out a clipboard. Thor stared at the clipboard. "I have already given it," he said. Umbridge dipped her quill. "This is a matter of record." Thor looked at Dumbledore again. "Is this how you judge warriors? With paper?" McGonagall's mouth tightened so hard it almost disappeared. Dumbledore's tone stayed pleasant. "Professor Umbridge, this is not the time." "Oh, but it is," Umbridge replied. "Any being On Hogwarts grounds must be registered. For safety. Harry felt anger rise in his chest. Safety. She always used that word like a weapon. Thor's voice dropped. Firm. If you fear for safety, then you should be grateful I did not arrive in the middle of your sleeping hall. Umbridge's cheeks flushed. That is quite enough, she snapped, then forced her smile back. You will come with me. We will conduct a proper interview. Thor did not move. I do not take orders from you, he said. Umbridge's smile froze. Everyone at Hogwarts takes orders from me. Thor's eyes narrowed. Lightning sparked once on his shoulder. Not wild, controlled, like a warning bell. The portraits on the walls stirred. One old wizard portrait muttered, "Oh dear." Umbridge lifted her wand slightly. McGonagall's wand was up in an instant. Dolores. Snape's wand hand twitched, like he was ready for violence, but hated that he was ready. Dumbledore stepped between them, calm as ever. No, Dumbledore said, soft but sharp. We will not do this in my office. Umbridge's eyes darted to Dumbledore, angry. You are harboring an unregistered, she began. Dumbledore smiled, and Harry knew that smile. It was the smile that meant Dumbledore had already decided. I am hosting a guest who arrived under unusual circumstances, Dumbledore said, and I am taking responsibility for him. Umbridge's voice tightened. The minister will hear of this. Thor leaned forward slightly. Tell your minister, he said, that if he wishes to speak, he may speak to me as an equal, not as a jailer. Umbridge looked like she had bitten a lemon. She spun on her heel and marched out, heels clicking like angry little hammers. The door shut. For a moment, the office felt quieter. Then Ron let out a breath he had been holding. Blimey. McGonagall rubbed her forehead like she already had a headache that would last a year. Snape's eyes stayed on Thor. You just made an enemy. Thor shrugged, cape shifting. She made herself one. Dumbledore's eyes flicked to Harry again, as if he was checking something. Harry's scar gave a small, cold prickle. Dumbledore's voice lowered. We must be careful. There are many kinds of enemies. Thor nodded once. Then tell me the rules of your war. McGonagall's lips pressed thin. You will find, she said, that we have far too many rules. Thor looked at her, serious. Then I will learn them. It sounded like a promise, and like a challenge. Over the next day, Hogwarts changed in small ways that felt big. Whispers ran through the corridors like mice. Students talked about a storm on the grounds, about a giant man, about lightning that touched the grass. Umbridge doubled patrols. She sent her inquisitorial squad everywhere. She put up new decrees. Dumbledore did not announce anything. That made everyone more curious. Harry, Ron, and Hermione were pulled into a quiet meeting in an empty classroom that evening. Dumbledore was there with McGonagall, and to Harry's surprise, Kingsley Shacklebolt. Kingsley looked calm, but his eyes were sharp. Thor stood near the window, looking out as if he could see threats through stone walls. Kingsley spoke first. The Ministry is nervous. They should be, Thor said, blunt. Kingsley's mouth twitched, almost amused. That does not help. Thor turned, studying Kingsley. You are a warrior. Kingsley nodded, slightly. In my way. Thor seemed to accept that. Then speak plainly. Kingsley did. If the Ministry cannot control you, they may try to lock you up. Or worse, use you as proof that Dumbledore is dangerous. Thor's jaw clenched. I will not be caged. Dumbledore's voice stayed calm. You may not have a choice, unless we move carefully. Thor looked frustrated, like the idea of politics annoyed him more than any monster. In my world, Thor said, if someone threatens your home, you strike first. Hermione spoke up, quick. In this world, If you strike first, they call you the villain." Thor stared at her, then at Harry. "And if you wait?" Thor asked. Harry's throat tightened. "Sometimes, you lose people." Thor's expression softened, just a little. He looked away like he did not want anyone to see it. McGonagall's voice was firm. "You will not go wandering the castle without an escort." Thor frowned. "This is a fortress. I should know its paths." "It is a school," McGonagall snapped. Thor's eyes narrowed. "It is both." Ron muttered. "He's not wrong." McGonagall shot him a look. Ron shut his mouth. Dumbledore gave Thor a small nod. "We can arrange guided walks, but you must understand, this place has secrets. Some of them are dangerous." Thor straightened. "If there are dangers in the walls, then hiding them from children is wise." Hermione said, "Hogwarts is not always wise." Thor huffed once, like he believed that. Later that night, Hermione took Harry and Ron to the library. She dragged them there, really. She had a look in her eyes that meant she would not sleep until she found answers. She piled books on the table like building blocks. Ron stared at the stack. "Hermione, are you trying to kill us with homework?" "This is not homework," Hermione said. "This is history." She flipped through a Muggle book first. Old stories. Pictures of a man with a hammer, lightning behind him. She then pulled out a wizarding text on ancient runes. "Look," Hermione whispered, pointing. "The symbols. Some of these match the stories." Harry leaned in. The symbols looked like scratches, like shapes carved into stone. Hermione's voice shook with excitement. "If he really is Thor, then he is not just powerful. He is part of old belief. People built stories around him." Ron looked pale. "So he's real." Harry's mind kept going back to the way the castle had reacted, the way his scar had prickled, the way Thor had looked tired when Hermione called him a god. "He didn't seem happy about it," Harry said quietly. Hermione nodded. "Because if people think you're a god, they stop seeing you as a person." Ron frowned, thinking hard. "Or they try to use you." Harry's scar gave a small, cold pulse, like it agreed. Harry looked up at the dark shelves. He had a bad feeling that someone else, far away, was reading too. Not books, people. The first attack came on a Saturday. It started with a Hogsmeade visit that should not have happened at all. Umbridge had announced it in the Great Hall, with a smile that made Harry's skin crawl. "As a reward for good behavior," she had said, voice sweet, "certain students will be allowed a short visit to Hogsmeade Village." Harry knew what it really was. A trap, a show, a way to prove the Ministry was in control. And if something went wrong, she could point at Dumbledore, or at the storm, man nobody was supposed to mention. Harry, Ron, and Hermione went anyway, with signed forms and tight nerves. They stayed close to each other. They watched the sky. The village looked almost normal. Snow piled on rooftops. Shop windows glowed. People walked with bags and scarves. But the normal feeling did not last. Harry felt it first. A cold that was not just weather. His scar did not prick. It was worse than that. It was a pressure, like fear pressing down on his shoulders. Hermione's face tightened. "Do you feel that?" Ron rubbed his arms. "Yeah, like someone just opened a freezer." Then a scream cut through the street. People turned. A woman dropped her bags. A child started crying. From the far end of the village, black shapes drifted in. They were not on feet. They floated. Long cloaks. Empty faces. Hands like dead branches. Dementors. Harry's stomach dropped. "Patronus," Hermione whispered, but her voice shook. More shapes appeared behind them, wizards in masks, Death Eaters. They did not rush in like a normal fight. They moved with purpose, like they had a plan. A masked figure raised a wand and fired a spell into the air. It burst like a dark flare. Harry's heart slammed. It was a signal. Ron grabbed Harry's sleeve. "We need to get people inside!" Hermione spun, pointing her wand. "Everyone, get indoors! Now!" Most people froze. They could not think. The Dementors made that happen. Harry fought through the fear and lifted his wand. "Expecto Patronum!" A silver light burst from the tip and formed into a stag, bright and strong. It charged forward, pushing the nearest Dementors back. But there were too many. The stag held them at a distance, but the cold kept pressing in from the sides. Hermione's otter sprang out, shining. Ron's dog followed, weaker but still there. Together, the three Patronuses made a bright bubble in the street. People stumbled toward the nearest shop, guided by the light. Then a new sound rolled through the village. Thunder. Not far away. Close. The clouds above Hogsmeade twisted. Wind snapped snow off rooftops. A crack of lightning struck the street, right in front of the Dementors. The blast did not hit people. It hit empty space, like a warning line drawn in light. And through the drifting snow, the tall, armored man walked forward. Thor. He was not smiling. His eyes were fixed on the Dementors, like he hated what they did to the air. He looked at the Death Eaters next, and his face hardened. Harry felt something strange in his chest. Relief, then panic. Because if Thor was here, it meant Dumbledore's careful plan had already broken. Thor lifted his weapon. Lightning crawled along the edge. "Back," Thor said, voice like a command. A Death Eater raised a wand. "Kill." The Death Eater never finished. Thor moved. He did not sprint like a normal man. He crossed the space in a blur of cape and storm. He swung the weapon's flat side, not the blade, and the Death Eater flew into a snowbank like a rag doll. Harry's eyes widened. Thor was not playing, but he was not trying to kill. He was controlling the fight. The Death Eaters spread out, trying to circle. They fired curses, red, purple, sick green. Thor raised one hand, and the air changed. Wind surged. The curses bent. Some were blown off target. Some hit the ground. One green curse sliced past Thor's shoulder and burned a wooden sign into ash. Thor did not flinch. He turned toward the caster, eyes narrowing. The Death Eater took one step back. Thor pointed his weapon upward. Lightning dropped straight down, not as a wild blast, but as a narrow strike. It hit the ground in front of the Death Eater, exploding snow and stone, making a crater. The Death Eater stumbled back, thrown off their feet. Harry saw the message clearly. Thor was saying, "I could have hit you. I chose not to." Hermione's voice rose, urgent. "Harry! Dementors!" The Dementors were still coming. Lightning made them jerk back. Yes, it pushed them away. But it did not end them. It did not make them vanish. They floated around the edges, searching for cracks in the Patronus light. Thor saw them. He stepped toward them like he meant to smash them out of the air. The nearest Dementor drifted forward. Its hood leaned toward him. And then Thor stopped. Not because he was afraid of being hit, because something hit him that was not a spell. Harry watched Thor's face change, his eyes unfocused for a heartbeat, his shoulders tensed. The air around Thor went colder. The Dementor fed on fear and pain, and Thor had a lot of pain. Harry saw it in the way Thor's grip tightened, in the way his jaw clenched so hard a muscle jumped. Thor's breathing turned heavy. Lightning flickered wildly, just for a second. Hermione gasped softly. "They're affecting him." Ron's voice shook. "How? He's him!" Harry understood. Dementors did not care if you were strong. They cared if you had darkness inside you. Thor had lost people. Harry could see it in his eyes. The Dementor drifted closer. Thor lifted his weapon, but the motion was slower now. The Dementor's face was hidden, but Harry could feel its hunger like a hand around his throat. Harry forced himself forward. He pushed his Patronus closer to Thor, strengthening the light around him. "Thor!" Harry shouted. Thor's eyes flicked toward Harry. The focus returned a little. Harry didn't know what to say. He didn't know what helped a god. So he said the truth. "Don't let them take your head," Harry said. "They lie." Thor blinked once, like he understood the idea. Then Thor stepped back into the bright Patronus light. The cold pressure eased slightly. Thor exhaled hard. "Good," Thor growled, voice low. "So these things are not of flesh," Hermione shouted. "They're Dementors! You can't hit them like normal enemies!" Thor looked at her. "Then what can?" Harry yelled. "Patronus!" Thor's eyes snapped back to the Dementors. He looked almost angry at himself for not seeing it sooner. "Then keep your light strong," Thor said. "I will give you space." He turned toward the street. The Death Eaters had regrouped. Two of them lifted their wands together, starting a spell that made the air shimmer like it wanted to tear. Thor did not wait. He raised his weapon and swung it in a wide arc. The clouds above Hogsmeade twisted like a cloth being wrung out. Thunder boomed. A wall of wind slammed down the street, pushing snow, pushing smoke, pushing the Death Eaters back like they were leaves. Windows rattled. People screamed and ducked inside shops. Thor planted his boots and lifted his weapon high. Lightning came down in a chain, striking the ground in front of the Death Eaters, not on them. It made a line of craters like a fence. "You will not cross," Thor said, voice loud enough for everyone to hear. A Death Eater laughed from behind a mask. "Big words," Thor's eyes flashed. "Small courage?" The Death Eater fired a curse at Thor's head. Thor moved his weapon slightly, and the curse hit the metal and broke apart in sparks. Harry felt Ron's mouth open beside him. "That's not fair," Ron whispered. Hermione whispered back, "He's not fair. He's Thor." The Death Eaters changed tactics. They aimed at the shops, at the people behind windows. One curse shattered a door. Another set a roof beam on fire. Harry's blood ran cold. "They're trying to make us split," Hermione nodded fast. "They want us busy saving people." Thor saw it too. He did not chase the Death Eaters like a hot-headed fighter. He became a shield. He threw his weapon. It spun through the air like a fast, heavy star. It struck the ground, and a burst of lightning exploded outward, forming a bright ring. The ring did not fry people. It pushed spells away. It made a safe space. Thor reached out his hand. The weapon snapped back into his grip like it was tied to him. Harry stared. "It comes back," Ron whispered. "That's cheating." Thor moved toward the burning roof. He lifted his palm and pulled the storm down in a careful way. Rain fell in a narrow sheet, putting out the fire without flooding the street. He turned back to the Death Eaters. They were hesitating now, not because they were scared of dying, because they were scared of being useless. Thor stepped forward, eyes bright. "You came to terrorize children," Thor said. "That is not war. That is sickness." A Death Eater shouted, "He's with Potter!" Harry's stomach dropped. The street heard that name. People heard it. A few faces turned toward Harry, confused, frightened, hopeful. Harry's grip tightened on his wand. Thor glanced at Harry, and Harry could feel the question in the look. "Are you the one they are after?" Harry nodded once, small. Thor's face hardened, not angry at Harry, angry at the idea of hunting a kid. The Dementors surged again, trying to break the Patronus line. Harry's stag pushed forward. Hermione's otter darted. Ron's dog barked like it meant business even when it shook. The Death Eaters raised their wands again, preparing something bigger. Thor lifted his weapon and pointed it at the sky. "Now," Thor said. Lightning struck the clouds, not the ground. The clouds split. Moonlight poured down like a spotlight. For a second, the Dementors recoiled from the sudden brightness. not defeated, but pushed back. Harry felt the opening. "Expecto Patronum!" Harry roared again, pouring everything he had into it. The stag blazed brighter. It charged through the center of the Dementors like a silver battering ram. Hermione and Ron followed, their Patronuses snapping forward, filling the gap. The Dementors scattered, drifting back, retreating into the darker alleys where moonlight was weaker. Thor slammed his weapon into the ground. A shock of thunder rolled out, not at people, but at the masked wizards. The Death Eaters staggered. Some fell. One tried to apparate away. Thor moved faster than Harry could track. He crossed the street and grabbed the Death Eater's cloak, yanking them back before they could vanish. Thor lifted the Death Eater off the ground with one hand. The mask stared back at him. Thor's voice was low and deadly calm. "Who sent you?" The Death Eater said nothing, just laughed through the mask. Thor's eyes narrowed. He did not squeeze. He did not crush. He simply raised the Death Eater higher until the person's boots kicked at air. "You will answer," Thor said. Harry shouted, "Thor!" Thor's head turned slightly. Harry swallowed. His chest hurt from the Patronus. "They want you to lose control," Harry said. "They want you to look like a monster." Thor stared at Harry for a long second. Then Thor lowered the Death Eater and threw them into the snow, hard but not fatal. Thor stepped back. "Clever," Thor said, voice tight. "They bait the storm." The Death Eaters saw the moment of restraint. They realized something. They could not win by force, so they chose escape. A masked witch screamed, "Retreat!" Smoke bombs burst. Dark fog rolled across the street. People coughed and shouted. The Dementors, already pushed back, drifted away into the thickening dark like stains, sliding off a wall. When the smoke cleared, the Death Eaters were gone. They left broken windows, burned wood, and fear behind. And they left one more thing. A mark burned into the snow at the far end of the street. A skull with a snake. The dark mark. Harry's scar flared, sharp as a knife. He doubled over. Hermione grabbed him. "Harry!" Ron looked around wildly. "Where are they? Where are they?" Thor stood very still, staring at the mark. His lightning had calmed, but his eyes were hard. "This is your enemy's sign," Thor said. Harry forced himself upright, breathing hard. "Yes." Thor looked at him. "He's close," Harry swallowed. "Yes." For a moment, Hogsmeade felt too small for the danger in it. Then Aurors arrived. Order members, too. Kingsley was there, face grim. He took in the scene in one sweep, and then he saw Thor. Kingsley's expression did not show shock, but his eyes changed, like he had just seen the war jump forward 10 steps. "Headmaster will not be able to hide this now," Kingsley said quietly. Thor looked at the damaged street, at the frightened people, at the children pulled inside shops. Thor's voice was rough. "I did not choose to come to your realm." Harry looked up at him. "But you chose to help." Thor's gaze met his. "I will always choose that," Thor said. Far away in a dark place, Voldemort felt the mark fade. He listened to the fear echoing through minds. He smiled. Not because the attack had won, because it had measured the storm, and because he now knew something important. Lightning could push Dementors back, but lightning could not erase pain, and pain was a doorway he knew how to use. The castle felt different after Hogsmeade. It was not just the whispers. It was the way the halls seemed tighter, like the stone itself was listening. Students leaned together in corners. Older kids talked fast and stopped when teachers walked by. First years looked like they were scared to blink. Harry, Ron, and Hermione were marched back through the gates with a group of shaken students and shopkeepers who had come for safety. Order members moved along the edges like silent guards. Thor walked behind them, not hiding, not rushing, He looked like he had decided the path was his to hold. His cape was torn at the bottom, and a thin line of soot marked one shoulder where a curse had come close. He did not seem hurt, but Harry could tell he was angry. Not wild angry. Focused angry. At the entrance steps, Professor McGonagall waited with a face like stone. When she saw Thor, her eyes narrowed. "You left the castle," she said. Thor met her stare. "Children were under attack." McGonagall's jaw clenched. "You were told to remain unseen." Thor's voice stayed calm, but it carried weight. "Your rules do not matter when lives are on the line." McGonagall took a step forward. "My rules matter because this is a school." Thor didn't back away. "Then your school is in a war." Harry expected shouting. He expected sparks. Instead, McGonagall took a slow breath through her nose, like she was forcing herself not to explode. She looked past Thor to the students. "Inside," she ordered, voice sharp. "All of you, straight to the Great Hall." As Harry walked, his scar throbbed once, then settled. He kept rubbing it without thinking. Hermione leaned close. "Harry, Dumbledore will want to know everything." Ron muttered, "Umbridge will want to know everything too." They all knew it. Umbridge wasn't in the Great Hall when they entered. That was worse. The Great Hall was packed, but it wasn't noisy. It was the kind of quiet that made forks and plates sound too loud. Dumbledore sat at the staff table, calm as ever. Kingsley stood nearby, arms folded, eyes scanning the room like he expected an attack right there. Thor did not go to the staff table. He stood near one of the tall windows, looking out at the grounds as if he was guarding them with his gaze. Harry sat between Ron and Hermione. Every few seconds, students craned their necks to stare at Thor. A few Slytherins whispered behind their hands. One of them said, loud enough for Harry to hear, "That's him, the Thunder thing." Harry's stomach twisted. Dumbledore stood. His voice carried easily, warm but firm. "There was an incident in Hogsmeade. Everyone is safe now. You will remain inside the castle until further notice." Murmurs started at once. "Dementors! Death Eaters! Did Potter do it?" Dumbledore lifted one hand, and the room quieted again. "I will not allow rumors to rule this school," he said. "If you are frightened, speak to your head of house. If you have questions, ask your professors. We will protect you." Harry watched Dumbledore's face. Dumbledore did not look scared, but Harry could see the tiredness around his eyes. The doors of the Great Hall banged open. Dolores Umbridge marched in with 2 Aurors behind her and an inquisitorial squad line trailing like little shadows. She wore pink, as always. Her smile was fixed too tightly. She walked straight up to the staff table without asking. "We need to talk," she announced. McGonagall's eyes flashed. "In the middle of dinner?" Umbridge ignored her. Her gaze slid across the hall and landed on Thor. Her smile widened, like she had just found a prize. "There he is," she said brightly. "The cause of all this trouble." Thor turned slowly. His eyes dropped to Umbridge. "You again," he said. Some students snorted. They tried to hide it. Umbridge's cheeks pinked. "Do not address me that way." Thor looked genuinely confused. "By seeing you?" Umbridge's smile twitched. "By that tone?" Thor's face remained calm. "I do not change my voice for bullies." A few Gryffindors made choking noises, trying not to laugh. Umbridge's eyes narrowed. She raised her voice, sharp and sweet at the same time. "Students," she said, "you will return to your common rooms at once. This is now a matter of ministry security." Dumbledore said politely, "No." Umbridge looked like she had been slapped. "Excuse me?" Dumbledore's voice did not rise. "This is my school. You do not command it." Umbridge's smile hardened. "Then you will be held responsible for what happened today." Kingsley spoke for the first time. calm but heavy. The attack in Hogsmeade was not caused by him. Umbridge sniffed. Oh? Then why did it happen when he appeared? Thor's eyes sharpened. It happened because your enemy hunts children. Umbridge's eyes flicked to the students. She did not like that word. It made her look bad. She snapped, "This person will come with us." Thor's posture changed slightly. Not a move toward violence, a move toward refusal. "No," Thor said. Umbridge's voice turned icy. "You are not registered. You are not a wizard. You are not under any known control." Thor's mouth tightened. "I am not under your control, yes." Umbridge's wand came up 1/2 inch. McGonagall's wand came up 2 inches. Snape's wand was already in his hand. Nobody had seen him draw it. Dumbledore's voice cut between them, still calm. "Dolores, put your wand away." Umbridge held her smile. "Albus, the minister insists." Dumbledore's eyes remained kind, but his tone changed. Not loud, just final. "Then the minister is welcome to insist somewhere else." Umbridge's face flushed. She turned to the Aurors. "Take him." The Aurors hesitated. They had seen Thor in Hogsmeade. They had seen lightning split the street. They did not want to be the first ones to touch him. Thor took 1 step forward. The floor under him did not crack, but the air seemed to tighten. "You will not lay hands on me," Thor said, voice low. "If your minister wishes to speak, he may come." Umbridge's smile snapped into a thin line. "Fine," she said. "Then I will make this school safe in other ways." She spun and pulled a parchment from her clipboard. She read it loudly, like it was a weapon. "Educational decree number." Groans came from every table. Umbridge's eyes gleamed. 112. Effective immediately, all non-human entities, unknown beings, and guests are forbidden from moving freely through Hogwarts without direct ministry escort. She smiled wider at Thor. "That includes you." Thor blinked. "You wrote a rule for me." Umbridge's voice was sweet poison. "I wrote a rule for safety." Thor's eyes narrowed. "No. You wrote a cage made of paper." Umbridge's smile stayed in place. "Paper is stronger than you think." Hermione's hands were clenched into fists on the table. Harry could see she was shaking with anger. Ron whispered. "How does she keep getting worse?" Hermione whispered back. "Practice." Dumbledore sat again. He did not argue the decree in front of the students, but Harry saw the tiny shift in his eyes. This was moving fast. And in the center of it stood Thor, who looked like he wanted to solve everything by walking straight to the enemy and ending it. That night, the castle did not sleep. Patrols doubled. Doors were watched. Umbridge's squad strutted through corridors like they owned the stones. Students were kept in their towers. Even the portraits seemed quieter. Harry lay awake, staring at the dark canopy above his bed. His scar was calm now. That didn't comfort him. It made him feel like Voldemort was thinking quietly, which was worse. Ron turned in his bed and whispered, "You think he's going to try to fight you-know-who?" Harry whispered back, "If he finds him, yeah." Ron swallowed. "That's insane." Harry stared into the dark. "So is everything else." The next day, Dumbledore called a meeting in his office. Harry, Ron, and Hermione were brought in. So were McGonagall, Snape, Kingsley, and one more person Harry did not expect. Sirius, in his dog form at first, slipping through the door before changing back into a man in the shadows. Thor stood near the window again, arms folded, gaze fixed on the sky like he was trying to see the door that had brought him. Dumbledore began simply. "We need clarity." Kingsley spoke first. Steady. "The Ministry is already spreading a story. They're saying the attack was connected to the outsider." Sirius's eyes burned. "They'll blame anyone except Voldemort." Hermione said quickly, They'll use him as an excuse to tighten control. McGonagall nodded, lips tight. They already have. Thor turned. Then you do not have a free government. Kingsley's mouth twitched, but he did not deny it. Not right now. Thor's frustration showed in the way his fingers flexed. In Asgard, if a leader lies and endangers the people, he is removed. Snape's voice slid in, quiet and sharp. And who removes him? You? Thor's eyes snapped to Snape. A council, a people, a king who earns his right. Snape's expression did not change. How noble. Thor's lightning flickered once, then calmed. He looked like he was learning not to react. Dumbledore watched him closely, like this mattered. Hermione lifted a hand, unable to help herself. Sir Thor, when you said realms, you mean you've traveled between worlds? Thor nodded. Many times. Hermione's eyes shone. Then there must be a way to send you back. Thor's face tightened. I don't know if the path is open. The bridge did not obey. Harry felt Thor's attention shift toward him again, like Thor had sensed something inside him. Thor's voice lowered. There is another force here. I felt it in the air yesterday, and I felt it when those cold creatures came close. Dumbledore's gaze sharpened. You mean the Dementors? Thor shook his head slightly. Not only them. Something else. A mind. A will. Harry's scar gave a small, cold pulse, like it wanted to agree. Sirius leaned forward. He's talking about Voldemort. Thor's eyes narrowed. That is the name. Harry's stomach tightened hearing it spoken so plainly. Thor looked at Dumbledore. Tell me where he is. Dumbledore did not answer directly. He is hidden. Thor's jaw clenched. Then we find him. Dumbledore's voice stayed gentle, but it carried steel. And if we rush, he uses that. He is not a warrior who meets you on open ground. He is a man who strikes from the shadows. Snape nodded once, almost unwillingly. He will not throw himself at a stronger opponent. He will turn the world against you instead. Thor's eyes hardened. Then let him try. Snape's gaze cut like a blade. He will not try to beat you. He will try to break you. The room went still. Harry's throat tightened. He thought of the way Thor had frozen for a heartbeat under the Dementor's cold pressure. Snape's voice dropped lower. Those creatures fed on your memories. Thor's fist tightened. Yes. Snape's eyes did not soften. Then he will feed you worse. Thor's lightning sparked, small, sharp. Then Thor did something that surprised Harry. He exhaled, slowly. I have faced grief before, Thor said, rough. It does not defeat me. Snape's voice was quiet, almost a hiss. Grief does not defeat you, but it makes you careless. Dumbledore stepped in softly. Severus. Snape didn't look away. You wanted clarity. That is the clarity. Thor stared at Snape for a long moment. Then Thor said, You fear what I could become. Snape's mouth curled. I fear what anyone becomes when they believe they are unstoppable. Thor's eyes flashed. I do not believe that. Snape replied instantly. Yet. Harry felt the tension like a rope pulled tight between them. Dumbledore changed direction before it snapped. We need a plan that does not rely on brute force, Dumbledore said. Thor frowned at that, like it tasted wrong. Hermione leaned forward, voice fast. There's something else. We found runes, old ones. They're in Muggle books and wizard texts, some match symbols used in ancient magic. Thor turned toward her. Show me. Hermione pulled parchment from her bag. Drawings, shapes, lines. Thor studied them. His eyes narrowed with recognition. These are not your runes, Thor said slowly. Hermione's heart seemed to jump. They're from your world. Thor nodded once. From mine. or from those who knew of mine. Harry felt a chill. If those symbols existed here, then the worlds weren't as separate as they seemed. Dumbledore's gaze sharpened. Where did you find them? Hermione swallowed. In a few texts, and there are marks in the castle too. Small ones, very old. I think Hogwarts has been touched by outside magic before. McGonagall's eyes narrowed. That is a serious claim, Miss Granger. Hermione didn't back down. I know, but it fits. Thor's voice lowered. If the bridge brought me here, then something here called to it. Or something opened a lock. Dumbledore nodded once, slowly. There is a place in our world where strange magic gathers, where the Ministry keeps secrets it does not understand. Kingsley's expression turned grim. The Department of Mysteries. Ron swallowed. You mean the place you can't just walk into? Sirius's eyes darkened. And the place Voldemort is already interested in. Thor's attention snapped to Sirius. Why? Sirius hesitated, then said, because there are things there that mess with time, death, minds. Things you don't want him touching. Thor's grip tightened on his weapon, not lifting it, but grounding himself. If he touches death, Thor said quietly, then he is already a fool. Harry's scar pulsed again, faint. Dumbledore looked at Harry for half a second. Harry looked away. Dumbledore continued, voice even. If the boundary between worlds has weakened, we must understand why. Not only for Thor's sake, for ours. McGonagall nodded stiffly. And we must do it without giving the Ministry an excuse to storm this castle. Kingsley exhaled. They're already looking for one. Thor turned back to the window and stared out at the cloudy sky. His voice was quieter now. In my life, I have solved many problems by striking. It is simple, clean. He looked at Dumbledore. But your war is not clean. Dumbledore's eyes were sad. No. Thor's mouth tightened. Then I must learn. That afternoon, Umbridge tried again. She did not burst into Dumbledore's office this time. She used a student messenger and a formal note with too many seals. It demanded Thor's presence in her office for registration and evaluation. Thor read it and frowned. Evaluation, he said, like the word annoyed him. Hermione's eyes flashed. Don't go. Thor looked at her. If I refuse, she grows bolder. Ron whispered. If you go, she'll try to trap you. Harry watched Thor's face. Thor was not used to being handled with rules, but he was used to walking into enemy halls and not blinking. I will go, Thor decided. McGonagall said sharply, absolutely not alone. Thor looked at her, then gave a stiff nod. Very well. You may witness. McGonagall looked like she didn't like being called a witness, but she agreed anyway. Umbridge's office smelled like fake flowers. Cats stared from every wall in frames. Umbridge sat behind her desk with a clipboard, smiling. When Thor stepped in, the room felt too small. McGonagall entered behind him like a storm cloud of her own. Umbridge's smile sharpened. Wonderful. Sit. Thor stared at the chair. It looked like it would break under him. He did not sit. No, Thor said. Umbridge's smile trembled. This is not a request. Thor stepped forward until he stood at her desk, towering. His voice stayed calm. You asked me to come. You did not summon me. Umbridge's eyes flicked to McGonagall, as if asking for help. McGonagall said coldly, Proceed, Dolores. Quickly. Umbridge licked her lips and dipped her quill. Full name. Thor Odinson. Species. Thor blinked. What? Umbridge's smile returned. Are you a wizard? A goblin? A giant? I'm Asgardian, Thor said. Umbridge scribbled like that was a disease. Asgardian. And your purpose in Britain? Thor's eyes narrowed. I did not choose this. Umbridge's quill scratched. But you will obey." Thor's voice lowered. "You keep saying that." Umbridge's smile tightened. "It is the law." Thor leaned slightly forward. "In my world, law that is used to hurt people is not law. It is a chain." Umbridge's cheeks went red. "How dare you?" Thor cut her off. "You are not brave. You hide behind rules." Umbridge's eyes flashed. "I will not be insulted in my own office." Thor glanced around at the cat pictures. "Then remove the cats. They look offended for you." McGonagall made a sound like a cough. It might have been a laugh trying to escape. Umbridge's face turned a deeper pink. "Enough. You will sign this registration." She shoved a parchment forward. Thor looked down at it. Lines, boxes, a space for a signature. Thor picked it up with 2 fingers. He looked at the words as if they were a foreign spell. Then he did something simple. He tore it in half, not with anger, just like it did not matter. Umbridge gasped like she'd been stabbed. McGonagall's eyes widened for 1 heartbeat. Then she looked stern again, as if she was trying not to enjoy it. Thor placed the torn parchment on the desk. "If your minister wishes to speak to me," Thor said, calm, "he may. But I do not sign chains." Umbridge's voice trembled with rage. "You will regret this." Thor's eyes stayed steady. "I do not fear you." Umbridge whispered, furious, "You should." As Thor turned to leave, McGonagall stepped close to him and hissed under her breath, "You are going to make my year very long." Thor replied, just as quietly, "Then you should demand a raise." McGonagall froze. Thor kept walking. Harry heard about it by dinner. Everyone heard. That night, Snape worked late in his dungeon. The air smelled like bitter roots and sharp herbs. He measured, stirred, and watched the surface of a dark potion ripple. He was not making a normal potion. Not exactly. It was a contingency, something that could dull a nervous system, slow a body, cloud a mind. He knew it might not work on a being like Thor. But planning was not about certainty. It was about options. A soft knock came. Snape didn't turn. "Go away." The door opened anyway. Dumbledore stepped in, robe brushing the stone. "You are preparing for a fight you do not want," Dumbledore said. Snape's spoon did not stop moving. "I am preparing for a fight you are pretending won't happen." Dumbledore's gaze fell on the potion. "Will that help?" Snape's mouth tightened. "Probably not." Dumbledore waited. Snape's voice turned low. "But if he loses control, we will need something. Anything. You saw how the Dementors touched him." Dumbledore's eyes were sad. "Yes." Snape's eyes stayed hard. "Then you know what Voldemort will do." Dumbledore said quietly, "He will try to make Thor strike first." Snape nodded once. "And once he does, the Ministry will call him a monster. Then they will call you his master. Then they will come for this school." Dumbledore's voice was soft. "So what do you suggest?" Snape finally looked up. "Keep him close. Keep him watched. Keep him from the boy." Dumbledore's eyes sharpened slightly. "Harry is not bait." Snape's voice did not change. "He is a target. That makes everyone around him bait, whether you like it or not." Dumbledore held Snape's gaze for a long moment. Then he said, "We will not isolate Harry." Snape's jaw tightened. Dumbledore's voice remained calm. "But we will prepare." Snape turned back to the potion. "That is all I ever do." Far away, in a hidden place, Voldemort listened through fear. Not with ears, with something else. He felt the tremble in minds when they spoke the Storm Man's name. He felt the anger in Umbridge. He felt the strain in Dumbledore. And he felt something more interesting than any of that. He felt Thor's grief like a deep wound that never fully closed. Voldemort smiled slowly. "Strong," he whispered. He turned his pale fingers over a small object in his hand, thinking. "Strong and full." His voice softened, almost pleased. "Pain makes even gods make mistakes." Thor hated waiting. He could handle storms. He could handle armies. He could handle monsters that screamed and bit. He hated hallways where rules decided where he could stand. He hated people like Umbridge, who smiled while they tried to put a rope around your neck. Worst of all, he hated seeing children walk like hunted animals inside their own home. He stood in an unused tower room Dumbledore had given him. It was not a prison, but it felt like one. Not because of walls, because of politics. Thor stared at the sky through a narrow window. He could feel the world's magic in the stones. It was old. It was strong. It was not like Asgard's power, but it was real. And somewhere in that magic was a crack, a wrongness, a place where the bridge had grabbed him and dragged him across. He heard a knock. Hermione entered with Harry and Ron behind her. Hermione was holding a stack of parchment like it was a shield. Ron looked nervous, as if he expected Thor to decide to fight the castle. Harry looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. Hermione didn't waste time. "We found more." Thor turned. "Show me." She spread papers on a table, sketches of runes, notes in tight writing, page numbers from books. Thor leaned over them. His shadow covered the table. "These marks," Hermione said, pointing, "are in the castle, in old places, behind portraits, under certain stones." Ron muttered, "We're not supposed to be behind portraits." Hermione snapped, "Ron." Thor's mouth twitched. "You break rules." Hermione's cheeks pinked. "Only the stupid ones?" Thor nodded as if that made perfect sense. Harry asked quietly, "Do you recognize them?" Thor traced a finger near one symbol without touching the parchment. "Yes," he said. "Some are like my world's runes. Protection, binding, travel." Hermione's eyes widened. "Travel." Thor looked at her. "Yes." Harry's stomach tightened. "So, someone here could call you." Thor's face hardened. "Or something." Ron looked pale. "That's great." Hermione pushed on. "There's only one place that fits the pattern. The books keep pointing to it. Old magic, hidden research, secret rooms." Harry's scar prickled. Faint. Hermione said the words anyway. "The Department of Mysteries." Thor's eyes narrowed. "Then we go." Ron blurted, "We can't just go." Thor looked at Ron like Ron had said the sky was closed. "Why not?" Thor asked. Ron gestured helplessly. "Because it's the Ministry, and they hate us. And there are guards. And laws." Thor frowned. "Your laws keep you from stopping your enemy," Harry said, quiet but firm. "That's the problem." Thor's gaze moved to Harry. "Then we solve it." Harry swallowed. "We need Dumbledore." Thor nodded once. "Then we speak to him. Now." They moved through the castle under an escort McGonagall insisted on, herself. She walked beside Thor like she was daring him to complain. Thor did not complain. He tried to be respectful. He tried. But when a suit of armor shifted as they passed, Thor turned sharply and reached for his weapon. McGonagall snapped, "It's a statue." Thor looked at it, then at her. "It moved," McGonagall replied. "Many things move here. You will have to cope." Thor stared at the statue again. "In my world, moving armor usually tries to kill you." McGonagall said, "In this world, moving armor usually tries to get you to class on time." Thor paused, like he was trying to understand class. Then he said, "This fortress trains its young." McGonagall said, "Yes." Thor looked serious. "Then it is a fortress." McGonagall sighed through her nose. "If you say that again, I will assign you homework." Thor blinked. "Homework," Hermione whispered. "Please do not." McGonagall shot Hermione a look. Thor's mouth twitched. "Is homework a trial?" Ron groaned. "It's worse." When they reached Dumbledore's office, Dumbledore was already there, as if he had expected them. Dumbledore listened. He did not interrupt. Hermione finished with, "If the crack is tied to travel magic, then the department might have records, or tools, or something," Thor said. "Direct. I will close the crack." Dumbledore folded his hands. "That is a worthy goal." Thor leaned forward. "Then we go." Dumbledore's eyes stayed gentle. "Not as a raid." Thor's jaw tightened. Dumbledore continued, "As a careful visit, with the right people, with the least noise possible." Thor's lightning flickered once, then faded. Harry spoke before Thor could argue. "If Voldemort is watching, we can't stumble in." Dumbledore looked at Harry for a moment, then nodded. "Yes." Kingsley arrived later that evening with news. "The Ministry is tightening security," he said. "They're using the attack as an excuse." Thor's voice was flat. "They did nothing. So now they pretend rules are strength." Kingsley didn't deny it. "I can get a small team in. Quietly. But it has to be soon." Dumbledore nodded. "Then we do it." McGonagall's eyes narrowed. "And the children?" Dumbledore's voice remained calm. "They will not go." Harry's chest tightened. Hermione's face fell. Ron looked relieved and guilty at the same time. Thor's gaze slid to Harry. Harry said quickly, "We can help." Dumbledore's eyes were kind, but firm. "Harry, you help by staying alive." Thor's jaw tightened again, like he didn't like that answer either. But he said nothing. 2 nights later, they went. Not the children. The adults. Thor. Dumbledore. Kingsley. Sirius. And at the edge of the group, like a dark stain that refused to leave, Snape. They traveled by flue and hidden routes. They moved through London like ghosts. The Ministry building felt different at night. Colder. Harder. Like stone that wanted to crush. Thor looked around as they passed statues and tall halls. "This place feels like fear," he said quietly. Kingsley muttered, "That's accurate." They reached the Department of Mysteries through locked doors and guarded corridors. Kingsley's credentials and Dumbledore's presence opened some paths. Other paths required spells. Snape didn't speak. He just watched everything. When the final door opened, the air changed. It was not just cold. It was strange. The hallway beyond was dark and wide, lit by a few pale lamps. Doors lined the walls, all identical, all closed. Hermione would have loved it. Harry would have hated it. Thor stood still for a moment, shoulders tense. He could feel it now, clearly. The wrongness. It was like hearing a faint crack in a quiet room. Dumbledore watched Thor. "You sense it?" Thor nodded. "Yes." They moved. The first room they entered was full of shelves and glass orbs that glowed faintly. Prophecies. Dumbledore kept them from touching anything. Kingsley stayed close, eyes scanning. Thor stared at the glowing orbs like they were trapped lightning. "These are voices?" Thor asked. Dumbledore nodded. "Words about the future." Thor frowned. "Then why keep them?" Dumbledore's voice was quiet. "Because people fear what they do not know, and they want to own it." Thor's mouth tightened. "That is foolish." Sirius muttered, "Welcome to the Ministry." They moved again. A door opened into a room where time felt wrong. Clocks spun in strange ways. A bell ticked when it shouldn't. Thor paused at the threshold. His lightning sparked once, nervous. "This room does not obey," Thor said. Snape murmured, "Neither does life." They moved past it. They passed a room where brains floated in tanks like pale creatures. Thor stared for a second, then turned away. "That is cruel," he said. Dumbledore's voice was soft. "It is curiosity without care." Finally, they reached a door that felt different. The air around it was tighter. Old. as if it had been sealed for a reason. Thor stepped close, and the runes Hermione had shown him seemed to echo in his mind. He placed a hand near the door, not touching. The door shivered. Kingsley's wand came up. "Thor!" Thor's eyes narrowed. "It recognizes me." Snape's voice was low. "Or it mistakes you for a key." Dumbledore lifted a hand. "Careful." Thor's jaw clenched. "Always." He nodded once to Dumbledore, like an oath. Then Thor pushed the door open. The room beyond was wide and dark. The floor was stone. The ceiling was lost in shadow. In the center, a circle was carved into the ground, with marks that made Thor's blood feel hot and cold at the same time. Asgardian runes. Not perfect, not clean. Old copies made by hands that didn't fully understand, but close enough to work. Thor stepped forward. The circle lit faintly. A low hum filled the room. Kingsley whispered, "Merlin's beard." Dumbledore's eyes were sharp now. "This should not be here." Thor's voice dropped. Someone built a lock. Snape's wand stayed aimed at the circle, or a door. The air thickened. A crack of sound snapped through the room like ice breaking. Then the circle flared. Not rainbow like the Bifrost. Dark blue, storm blue. A shape rose from the center, tall and broad, made of wind and frost and lightning that didn't belong to this world. It was not Thor, but it felt like it knew him. It lifted a head made of swirling cloud and ice, and in a voice that sounded like thunder dragged through a cave, it spoke one word. "Odin." Thor froze. His face changed fast. Surprise, pain, anger, then control, forced hard. "My father is not here," Thor said, voice rough. The storm shape twisted, as if listening, then surged forward. The floor iced over in a fast wave. Kingsley stumbled back as cold raced toward his boots. Dumbledore raised his wand. "Protego!" A shield flared. The ice slammed into it and split around like water hitting a rock. Sirius moved to the side, wand up, eyes wild. "What is that thing?" Thor stepped forward, weapon lifting. "It is an echo," Thor growled. "A piece of a storm made into a creature." The echo lunged. Thor met it. He didn't punch it like a man. He struck with a god's force, his weapon cutting through the storm body. The echo ripped apart, then reformed. It wasn't flesh, it wasn't bone. It was power held together by a pattern. Dumbledore shouted, "The circle! It's anchoring it!" Snape snapped, "Of course it is!" The echo swung an arm of ice and lightning. The blast slammed into Thor's chest and pushed him back 3 steps. Not because Thor was weak, because the force was massive. The room shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Kingsley fired spells into the circle's edge, binding, breaking, cutting. Some fizzled, some sparked. The runes resisted like they were metal. Dumbledore moved with clean speed, wand slicing through the air. He aimed not at the echo, but at the markings on the floor. "Finite!" The circle flared brighter, then steadied again. Snape's eyes narrowed. "It's layered, old magic, and new!" Thor planted his boots on the icy stone. Lightning crawled over his arms. He raised his weapon high. "This is my fault," Thor said, voice tight. "It smells like my realm because I am here." The echo surged again, reaching for him like it wanted to swallow him. Thor didn't retreat. He stepped in. He swung downward, and the strike carried thunder so loud it felt like it would tear the room apart. The echo burst apart again, and this time, Thor didn't give it time to reform. He thrust his palm forward and pulled the lightning out of the air, not wild, not random. He shaped it. A tight cage of crackling light formed around the echo's core, holding the storm in place like a net. The echo screamed with soundless thunder and tried to force its way out. Thor gritted his teeth, holding it. "Now!" Thor barked. Dumbledore understood instantly. He raised his wand and spoke a spell that made the air shimmer like a curtain. The shimmer wrapped around the circle. Kingsley added force, pushing magic into the pattern. Snape moved like a snake, fast and precise. He threw a small vial at one of the rune lines. The liquid hit and smoked, eating into the carved groove like acid. The circle flickered. The echo howled and surged. Thor staggered one step, but he held. "You will not take this place," Thor roared. His voice filled the room like a command to the sky. The circle cracked. A thin line split across the stone with a sharp sound. The echo's form wavered. Dumbledore's eyes flashed. "Again!" Snape threw another vial, breaking a second point in the pattern. Kingsley slammed his wand down and forced a final binding spell into the floor. The circle went dark. The echo lost its anchor. For half a second, it hung in the air, caught in Thor's lightning net, confused and angry. Then it collapsed into mist. The room fell silent except for heavy breathing. Thor lowered his arms slowly. His lightning faded. The ice on the floor began to melt, leaving wet stone. Dumbledore looked at the cracked circle with a face that was calm, but deeply troubled. "This," Dumbledore said softly, "was built." Kingsley nodded. "Someone wanted this door." Snape's eyes were cold. "And now it knows it can open." Thor stared at the broken runes. His voice was rough. It called my father's name. Dumbledore's gaze lifted to Thor. "It used what it could reach." Thor's jaw clenched. "It reached for my family." Snape's voice was quiet, sharp. "And that is how he will reach for you next." Thor looked up fast. "Hey." Dumbledore did not say Voldemort's name here. The room felt like it might remember it, but his eyes said it anyway. Thor's fist tightened. "I will not be played," Thor said. Snape's stare didn't blink. "Then stop pretending you are immune." Thor's lightning sparked once. Then Thor did something that surprised even Snape. He nodded, a short, stiff nod. "Fine," Thor said. "Teach me your enemy's tricks." They left the room fast, sealing doors behind them, wiping traces where they could. But as they passed the long hallway of identical doors, Thor felt it again. Not the echo. The crack. It was smaller now, but it wasn't gone. Like a wound that had been stitched, but could split again. Back at Hogwarts, the next morning brought new decrees. Umbridge had heard something. Harry didn't know how, but she always heard. She stood in the entrance hall with parchment in her hand and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Effective immediately," she announced. "All staff and students will submit to increased inspections. Any unusual activity will be reported to the ministry." Her eyes slid toward Thor, who stood under guard near the staircase, watched by two Aurors who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Umbridge's voice became sugary. "We cannot allow accidents." Thor stared at her, calm and towering. "You call your fear an accident," Thor said. Umbridge's smile tightened. "I call you a danger." Thor's eyes narrowed. "Then you should be grateful I am not your enemy." Umbridge's cheeks flushed. She turned away sharply, like she couldn't stand looking at him. Harry watched her go and felt sick, because Umbridge wasn't the real enemy. She was just a tool. And somewhere, Voldemort was smiling, because now he knew there was a door made of Thor's pain. And the crack in the world had a shape, a storm shape, and it had learned how to speak. Weeks passed, but the fear did not. It just learned how to live in the halls. Students still went to class. They still ate at the long tables. They still laughed sometimes when they forgot to be careful. But the laughter never lasted. It always died when a door opened too hard, or when Umbridge's heels clicked around a corner. Every few days, another decree appeared on the wall. Every few nights, the sky over Hogwarts rumbled, even when the weather should have been calm. Thor hated that part the most, not the thunder, He understood thunder. Hated the way the castle was full of small people forced to act brave while grown-ups argued about paper. So he made himself useful in the only way he knew how. He became a guard. At night, when most students slept, Thor walked the corridors that McGonagall allowed. He learned the stairs that moved. He learned the doors that liked to lock when they felt moody. He learned the sound of every suit of armor shifting. He also learned that Hogwarts had its own rules, and the rules fought back. One night, a line of armor moved behind him. Thor spun, weapon half raised. McGonagall's voice snapped through the dark. "If you strike that armor, I will personally assign you essays." Thor froze. It moved. "It always moves," McGonagall said, stepping out from a side corridor with her wand ready. "It is bored." Thor stared at the armor like it had insulted him. "Then it should find an enemy." McGonagall's eyes narrowed. "It has. You." Thor's mouth tightened. "I will challenge it properly." "You will do no such thing," McGonagall said. "You will walk away." Thor stared at her. Then, very slowly, he lowered his weapon. He walked away like a man swallowing a stone. Behind him, the armor clanked, almost smug. Ron heard about it by breakfast and nearly choked on his drink. "He tried to duel a suit of armor," Ron whispered, shaking with silent laughter. Hermione pinched the bridge of her nose. "He's adapting." "He's not adapting," Ron said. "He's declaring war on furniture." Harry watched Thor across the Great Hall. Thor stood near a pillar instead of sitting. He refused the chairs, partly because they were small, and partly because he did not like being trapped at a table. His eyes scanned the room the way an Auror's eyes would. Students stared at him more openly now. The story had spread. It always did. A Thunder Warrior had come from another world. He had fought Death Eaters in Hogsmeade. He had made Umbridge go red in the face. Some kids were afraid of him. Some kids worshipped him in whispers. And Harry, even when he tried not to, kept thinking the same thing. If Voldemort decided Thor was a problem, Voldemort would not stop. Dumbledore did not let the war become a brawl. He kept meetings quiet. He kept the Order moving in small ways. He kept Thor close, but not chained. Thor trained with Kingsley in the evenings, not in the Great Hall where Umbridge could scream, but in an unused courtyard shielded by careful spells. Kingsley taught Thor how wizards fought when they could not match raw strength. "Spells aren't muscles," Kingsley said one night, pacing in a circle with his wand out. "They don't care how strong you are. They care if they hit you." Thor frowned. "Then why do you duel at all?" Kingsley gave him a look. "Because if I don't duel, I die." Thor's jaw tightened, as if he disliked that logic, but could not deny it. Kingsley fired a red curse. Thor moved fast, dodging it cleanly, cape snapping. Another spell came, purple and sharp. Thor swatted it aside with his weapon like it was an arrow. Kingsley nodded, pleased. "Good. But don't get used to that." Thor's brow furrowed. "Why?" Kingsley's voice stayed calm. "Because the ones that matter won't be easy to swat." That night, Snape watched from a shadowed archway. Thor sensed him before he stepped out. "You follow me," Thor said, not turning. Snape's voice came smooth and cold. "I observe you." Thor finally faced him. "Why?" Snape's eyes stayed flat. "Because you are a storm trying to learn to live in a glass room." Thor's fingers tightened slightly. "Do you speak in riddles on purpose?" Snape's mouth barely moved. "Yes." Thor took a slow breath, forcing patience. "You think I will break?" Snape stepped closer, wand down but ready. "I think you could, if someone pulls the right string." Thor's eyes flashed. "He will try." Snape nodded once. "Good. Then you understand." Thor's voice turned rough. "I'm not a child. I know grief." Snape's gaze didn't soften. "Grief is not the problem. Grief is the liver. Thor's lightning sparked once, then faded. He was learning to pull it back. Then tell me, Thor said, blunt, how does your enemy fight? Snape studied him for a long moment. Then Snape said, he does not fight. He hunts. Thor's jaw set. Then I will not run. Snape's voice cut sharper. You will not chase either. You will protect what is in front of you. Or he will use your pride to drag you where he wants. Thor held Snape's stare. For once, he didn't argue. He only said, fine. And it sounded like it cost him something to say it. The next week, Umbridge tried to corner Thor again. She did it in the corridor outside the Great Hall, right where students could see. 2 Aurors stood behind her. One looked tired. The other looked nervous. Umbridge's smile was tight. Good afternoon. Thor looked at her like she was a bad smell. Is it? Umbridge's eyes flicked to the students watching. She wanted an audience. I have an updated document, she said sweetly. It includes restrictions for your movements, your weapons, your contact with students. Thor's gaze sharpened. You keep writing cages? Umbridge's voice stayed sugary. I keep writing safety. Thor leaned closer, just enough to make the Aurors flinch. Your safety is fear. Umbridge's smile cracked for a second. Then she recovered. You will sign, she said, voice firmer now. Thor didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He simply turned and walked away. Umbridge's cheeks burned red, and her voice rose behind him. You cannot ignore ministry authority. Thor didn't even look back. He only lifted one hand and pointed upward, toward the ceiling. Your authority, he said, calm, is smaller than this castle's patience. Students tried not to laugh. Umbridge's eyes went sharp and hateful. Harry felt a chill, because Umbridge would not forget that, and because Voldemort would enjoy it. That same night, the message came, not by owl, not by letter, by storm. Thor was on the battlements, watching the grounds. The air was cold. Snow lay in soft sheets. The forest looked like a dark line cut into the world. A gust of wind rose from nowhere and wrapped around him. For a moment, Thor smelled smoke. Not Hogwarts smoke, a different smoke, a memory. He blinked hard. The wind carried a whisper that did not belong in the night. Odinson. Thor's spine went rigid. The words slid into his mind like a blade. He turned, scanning the empty stone walkway. Nothing was there. Then a line of frost formed on the stone in front of him. It wrote itself like a finger was drawing it. Symbols? Runes? Thor knelt, eyes narrowing. He could read them. Not perfectly. They were wrong in places, like someone copying a language they didn't fully know. But the meaning was clear. A door for a door. Pain for peace. Come to the lake when the moon is thin. Bring your storm. I will bring your dead. Thor's breath turned heavy. His fingers tightened on his weapon so hard the metal creaked. For half a heartbeat, he saw her in his mind. Frigga. Not a picture. A feeling. A warmth he had not felt in too long. Then it vanished, and he was left with cold air and words on stone. Thor stood slowly. He did not move for a long time. Behind him, the castle stayed quiet. Inside, children slept. Thor's jaw clenched. He went straight to Dumbledore. Dumbledore listened without interrupting as Thor spoke, voice rough and controlled. When Thor finished, Dumbledore's expression stayed calm, but his eyes tightened. He has learned to speak to you, Dumbledore said softly. Thor's voice was low. He offered my family. Dumbledore nodded once. Of course he did. Thor stared at the floor like it had offended him. I did not answer, Thor said. Dumbledore's gaze stayed gentle. That is already a victory. Thor looked up, eyes bright with anger. It is not enough. No, Dumbledore agreed. It is not. Snape was in the room too, leaning against the wall like a shadow that refused to leave. Snape's voice came quiet. He wants you alone. Thor's eyes cut to him. I know. Snape's gaze didn't blink. He wants you to choose your grief over this school. Thor's jaw tightened. I will not. Snape's tone stayed sharp. Then prove it by not walking into his trap. Thor's lightning flickered once. Then Thor did something that surprised even himself. He asked, "What would you do?" Snape's eyes narrowed slightly, as if he hadn't expected the question. I would let him think I was tempted, Snape said, and I would set the trap where I choose. Thor stared. Dumbledore's fingers tapped once on the desk. Severus is unpleasant, but not foolish. Thor's mouth tightened. Then we will meet him on our terms. Dumbledore nodded. Yes. Harry found out anyway. He always did. Hermione heard whispers from portraits. Ron heard it from someone's older brother. Harry felt it in his scar even before words reached him. He cornered Thor the next day in an empty corridor near the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy. Thor stood with his back to the wall like a guard again. Harry didn't waste time. He's calling you. Thor's eyes stayed on Harry. Yes, Harry swallowed. What did he offer? Thor hesitated. Then he said it plainly, like ripping off a bandage. He offered my dead. Harry's stomach dropped. He knew that kind of offer. He had seen the mirror of a reset. He had heard voices in the dark. He had felt Voldemort try to crawl into his head and make it home. Harry's voice went quiet. He can't. Thor looked at him, and for a second, the god looked tired in a way Harry understood. I know, Thor said, but wanting is not the same as believing. Harry's scar prickled faintly. Harry forced himself to keep his voice steady. He will use you if you go alone. Thor's gaze sharpened. I will not go alone. Harry hesitated, then said the thing he hadn't wanted to say. I'm bait too. Thor's eyes narrowed. You are a child. Harry's jaw tightened. I'm in this war. Thor's lightning sparked once, quick and sharp, like anger that someone had dragged Harry into it. Then Thor's voice dropped. That is why I stay. Harry stared. You could leave. Thor's mouth twisted. Could I? Harry didn't have an answer. Thor's eyes shifted down the corridor, checking for listeners like he'd learned to do. Then he said, quieter. When I arrived, I thought strength would be enough. Then I saw your cold creatures. I saw the fear in the streets. I saw how your enemy hides behind children. Thor looked back at Harry. I will not give him what he wants. Harry nodded, throat tight. Good. Thor's expression didn't soften much, but his voice did. And you will not chase him either. Harry bristled. You can't order me around. Thor stared at him. Harry felt the weight of that stare. Not cruel, not controlling. Protective. Thor said. Calm. Yes, I can. Harry opened his mouth to argue. Then he shut it. Because a small part of him knew Thor wasn't doing it to win a fight. He was doing it because he had already lost people, and he didn't want to lose more. The night of the thin moon came anyway. Dumbledore did not send Thor to the lake. He sent the school into lockdown. Doors sealed, staircases rerouted, teachers placed like guards at corners. Umbridge raged in her office like a trapped cat, but she could not undo wards she did not understand. Harry sat in the Gryffindor common room with Ron and Hermione, pretending to read, while every nerve in his body screamed to move. His scar was quiet. That was the loudest warning of all. Outside, snow fell in slow, soft sheets, and then the storm arrived, not from clouds, from nowhere. Lightning flickered above the towers without thunder at first, like silent teeth flashing in the sky. The air turned cold in a sharp way that made Hermione's eyes widen. "That's not normal," she whispered. Harry stood, heart hammering. "It's him." Ron looked sick. "You know who?" Harry's scar prickled once, faint, like a finger pressing a bruise. Hermione grabbed her wand. "Harry, don't!" The common room door burst open, not with a student, with Professor McGonagall, face hard. "Stay here," she snapped. "Don't move." Harry's chest tightened. "What's happening?" McGonagall didn't soften. "An intrusion." Hermione's voice went thin. "Death Eaters?" McGonagall's jaw clenched. "Possibly. Dementors as well." Ron's face went pale. "Inside Hogwarts?" McGonagall's eyes flashed. "I said stay here." She slammed the door shut and locked it with a sharp flick of her wand. Harry spun to Hermione. "We have to help!" Hermione's voice shook, but her eyes were fierce. "I know!" Ron swallowed. "How?" Harry looked around the room. His eyes landed on the portrait hole. He stepped closer. "Sir Cadogan," Harry said, fast. The portrait knight blinked, startled. "Hello," Harry spoke quickly, voice low. "We need a way out that isn't the door." Sir Cadogan puffed up. "A secret passage, eh? A noble quest!" Hermione hissed. "Hurry!" Sir Cadogan scratched his head, then pointed his sword at the stone beside the fireplace. "There's a passage behind the third barrel in the corridor, beyond. Ron grabbed Harry's sleeve. "We don't have time for riddles." Harry glared at the stone. Then the fireplace flared green. Not flue flame. A sick, oily green that made Harry's scar burn. A voice filled the room without coming from any mouth. Soft, cold, smiling. "Hello, Harry." Ron stumbled back like he'd been hit. Hermione's face went white. Harry's chest tightened. His scar burned like a hot nail. The voice continued, calm and pleased. "You are behind doors again. Always behind doors." Harry forced himself to speak. "Get out of my head." The voice chuckled. "I'm not in your head. Not yet." The green flame rose higher. In it, Harry saw a shape, not a full body. A face, pale and sharp, like a mask made of bone. Voldemort's eyes gleamed. Hermione raised her wand, hands shaking. "How?" Voldemort's gaze slid to her like she was a bug. "The clever girl, always holding the boy's hand." Ron's voice cracked. "Shut up!" Voldemort smiled wider. "And the loyal one, loyal enough to die for him." Harry's stomach dropped. Voldemort's gaze returned to Harry. "You feel it, don't you? The storm." Harry's scar flared again. Voldemort's voice turned almost gentle. "Your new guardian thinks he can stop me." The green flame shook like laughter. "Tell him," Voldemort whispered. "I have something he wants." The fire went out. The common room dropped back into normal torchlight, but the air felt poisoned. Hermione grabbed Harry's arm hard. "He's inside the wards," Ron whispered, terrified. "How is he talking to us?" Harry's scar throbbed, and he realized the answer with cold clarity. He wasn't talking through walls. He was talking through cracks, the same kind of crack that had pulled Thor into this world. They didn't wait. They found the passage Sir Cadogan had mentioned, fighting panic and moving quietly, like they'd done 100 times before. They crawled through narrow stone, scraped elbows, and emerged into a corridor that smelled like dust and old magic. They followed distant sounds, shouts, footsteps, a crash that rattled the stones. Then they reached an open archway and saw the entrance hall. It looked like a battlefield, not ruined, not burning, but under attack. A dozen Death Eaters stood near the main doors, masked and spread out like they owned the place. Their wands were up, and hovering above them, drifting like black stains, were Dementors. Teachers formed a line on the stairs. McGonagall, Flitwick, Sprout, and others, casting shields and counterspells. Kingsley was there with Order members, moving fast and controlled. and in the center of it all stood Thor. Lightning crawled over his armor. His cape snapped in a wind that didn't exist anywhere else in the hall. He did not look wild. He looked like a wall. A Death Eater fired a curse toward a group of first years being rushed down a side corridor. Thor moved without thinking. He stepped across the path and took the curse on his weapon, deflecting it into the stone floor where it burst harmlessly. He didn't chase the attacker. He pointed his weapon, and a tight bolt of lightning struck the ground in front of the Death Eater, making them stumble back. A warning, not an execution. Harry's chest squeezed with relief. Then he saw what Voldemort had built into the attack. Near the base of the stairs, a circle of runes glowed faintly on the stone floor. It looked like the broken circle from the Department of Mysteries. But this one had been drawn fast, with fresh blood-red ink and black ash. The runes hummed, and inside that circle, the air shimmered like a curtain. A voice drifted out of it, low and soft, meant for one person. Odinson. Thor's head snapped toward the circle. The lightning around him flickered, not out of weakness, out of recognition. Harry's stomach dropped. The circle wasn't just a trap. It was a hook. The shimmer in the circle sharpened into a shape. For a heartbeat, Harry thought it was a person. Then he realized it was a memory made into light. A woman's outline. Gentle. Calm. Her hand raised as if reaching for Thor. Thor froze. His face tightened, and Harry saw it again. The grief, raw and real, like a wound pulled open. "No," Thor said under his breath. The outline's voice was soft. "My son." Thor's breath hitched. Harry's throat tightened. He didn't know this woman, but he knew what it meant to see someone you wanted back. Hermione grabbed Harry's sleeve. "That's not real," Ron whispered. "It's messing with him." A Dementor drifted closer to Thor from the side, drawn by the crack in his control. Thor's lightning surged, bright and dangerous for half a second. Snape appeared out of nowhere, stepping between Thor and the Dementor. Snape's wand snapped up. "Expecto Patronum!" A silver doe burst from his wand and rushed forward, bright and clean. It rammed the Dementor back into the air like a strong wind. Harry's eyes widened. Hermione stared. Ron looked like he'd been slapped. Snape didn't look at them. He didn't look at anyone. His gaze stayed on Thor, sharp and warning. "Don't look at it," Snape said, voice like ice. Thor's eyes were still on the outline. The outline's face sharpened a little, and for a moment it looked almost real. Thor's voice cracked, just slightly. "Mother." Harry felt his scar burn again. Then Voldemort's voice slid into the hall, not loud, but clear enough to cut through shouts and spells. "Well done," Voldemort said. "You hear her?" The Death Eaters laughed behind their masks. Teachers looked around, searching for the source. Voldemort's voice came from everywhere at once, like it was hanging in the air itself. "I can give you more than echoes," Voldemort whispered to Thor. "I can give you a door that opens both ways." Thor's jaw clenched, his eyes hardened, but his body did not move. Voldemort's voice turned smooth and tempting. "Step into the circle. Lower your storm, and I will let you speak to them." Harry saw Thor's hand tighten on his weapon. He saw the struggle. It wasn't a struggle of strength. It was a struggle of want. Dumbledore's voice rang out, firm and clear. "Do not listen." Dumbledore stepped onto the stairs, wand raised, eyes bright with focus. His shield magic widened, protecting fleeing students. But Voldemort didn't answer Dumbledore. He was looking for Thor. "Tell me," Voldemort purred. "How many worlds have you failed to save, Odinson?" Thor's lightning flared. The floor trembled. Kingsley shouted, "Hold the line!" Flitwick yelled, "Shield the children!" McGonagall snapped, "Move! Move!" Harry couldn't stand it. He pushed forward, weaving through the chaos, wand up. Hermione and Ron followed, faces tight with fear. "Thor!" Harry shouted. Thor's head jerked slightly, as if Harry's voice cut through the illusion. Harry ran closer, staying out of the glowing circle's edge. "That's not her," Harry said, loud and clear. "He's using you!" Thor's eyes flicked to Harry, and the focus returned a fraction. Voldemort's voice sharpened, annoyed. "Ah, the boy, always ruining things." The outline in the circle turned slightly, as if it could see Harry now. Its face changed. Not much, just enough. Its eyes became wrong, cold. Harry's stomach dropped. "That's not your mother," Harry said again, more firmly. Thor's face hardened. His grief didn't vanish, but something else rose over it. Anger. Not wild anger. Clear anger. Thor stepped back one pace from the circle. Voldemort's voice turned silky again. "You will never see them again." Thor's voice came low and rough. "Then I will honor them by refusing you." The outline in the circle flickered, like the lie didn't like being called out. Voldemort's voice turned colder. "So be it." The Death Eaters raised their wands together. A heavy wave of magic slammed into the hall. Shields flared and strained. Glass cracked high in the windows. The Dementors surged forward, feeding on panic and trying to smother the bright Patronus dough. Snape's face tightened, but he held it. Dumbledore moved like a chess master in a storm, casting spells that cut lines, break formations, and keep people alive. Thor lifted his weapon. He didn't strike at Voldemort's voice. He struck at the rune circle. But not by smashing it like a hammer on stone. He changed tactics. He raised his weapon to the ceiling and pulled the lightning up and away from the ground. The air above the circle brightened, as if a storm was being dragged into the roof. Then Thor slammed the butt of his weapon into the floor beside the circle. Beside it, not on it. The impact sent a controlled shock through the stone. The rune ink cracked in thin lines. The circle's glow faltered. Voldemort hissed, anger slipping into his voice for the first time. "Careful." Thor's eyes flashed. "I am." He thrust his palm out and sent a tight bolt of lightning into the air above the circle, not into the circle itself. The lightning didn't destroy the circle by force, it starved it. It drew the power up, away, like pulling water from a sink. The shimmer weakened. The outline twisted, then collapsed into smoke. A Death Eater screamed, furious, and fired a killing curse straight at Thor. The green light flashed. Thor moved. He moved fast enough that the curse missed his heart and hit the stone pillar behind him, blasting a chunk out of it. The stone exploded in dust. Students screamed. Thor didn't chase the caster. He looked at the broken pillar and understood what the spell could do. His voice turned deadly calm. "No more." He stepped forward. Wind slammed through the hall as Thor called it, strong enough to knock Death Eaters off balance, but not strong enough to throw students down the stairs. Their formation broke. Kingsley and the Order surged in, catching openings. McGonagall's spells snapped like whips, binding ankles, disarming hands, driving attackers back. Flitwick's charms struck wands out of grips like invisible hands. Sprout's plants erupted from cracks, wrapping boots and pinning legs. Thor became the center wall again. A Death Eater tried to rush a side corridor where younger students were trapped behind a locked door. Thor cut them off with one swing that sent a thunderwave across the floor. The Death Eater skidded back and dropped their wand. Thor pointed the weapon at their mask. "Leave," Thor said. The Death Eater didn't answer. They fled. Voldemort's voice returned, low and amused again, as if he hadn't just lost a trap. "Impressive," he said. "You have learned restraint." Thor's head tilted slightly, listening like a hunter. "Where are you?" Thor growled. Voldemort chuckled. Not where you can strike. The rune circle on the floor sparked once more, not with an illusion this time, with a tear. A small rip in the air, like fabric splitting. Cold poured out. Not Dementor cold. Something deeper. Harry felt it in his bones. The Death Eaters began to retreat toward the doors, moving like they had completed a job. Dumbledore's eyes narrowed. "He has taken something," Kingsley shouted. "What did they do?" Snape's gaze fixed on the rip. They widened the crack. Thor stepped toward it, lightning ready. Dumbledore's voice snapped, rare and sharp. "Do not touch it." Thor stopped, mid-step, jaw clenched. Dumbledore moved his wand in a tight circle, layering seals. Flitwick joined, adding charms that looked like glowing threads. Kingsley added force, pushing the rip shut. But the tear resisted. Voldemort's voice came soft and pleased. "It will not close fully. Not now. Not after he came." Thor's eyes flashed, furious. "You used me." Voldemort's voice laughed quietly. "You were a door that walked in." Thor's lightning surged. The hall shook. For a second, Harry thought Thor might rush into the rip and tear the world apart just to reach Voldemort. Then Harry saw Thor's gaze drop to the students clustered behind shields, to the first years shaking, to the teachers holding the line. Thor inhaled hard, and he did what Snape had demanded, what Dumbledore had begged. He protected what was in front of him. Thor thrust his weapon upward and called the storm into the ceiling again, not to attack, but to feed Dumbledore's ceiling work. Lightning crawled across the air like bright veins, forming a net above the tear. The rip screamed silently, twisting. Then it shrank, not gone, but smaller. A wound wrapped tight. Voldemort's voice turned distant, fading like smoke. "You chose them?" Thor's voice was low. "Yes." Voldemort's whisper was almost tender. "Then you will lose them." And then the voice was gone. The Death Eaters vanished into smoke and shadow, retreating through paths only they knew. The Dementors drifted away, pushed back by Patronuses and by the shrinking tear that no longer fed them. The entrance hall fell into a stunned silence, broken only by sobs and coughs. Harry's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold his wand. Hermione grabbed his sleeve, eyes wet but fierce. "Harry, you're bleeding." Harry touched his scar and felt warm dampness. He hadn't even noticed. Ron looked around, wild. "Is it over?" McGonagall's voice came tight. "For tonight." Kingsley stared at the sealed tear, face grim. He proved he can reach inside the wards. Dumbledore's eyes were heavy. Yes, Thor stood very still, staring at the place where the tear had been. His lightning was gone now. His shoulders sagged a little, as if holding back the storm had taken effort. Snape stepped close, voice low enough that only Thor could hear. "He didn't want you to kill him," Snape said. "He wanted you to reveal yourself." Thor's jaw clenched. "And he wanted the crack." Snape nodded once. "Now he has a thread." Thor stared at him. "Then we cut it." Snape's mouth tightened. "If we can find where it leads." Dumbledore turned to Thor, gaze steady. "You did well." Thor looked at him, and the anger in his eyes didn't vanish, but it steadied. "I wanted to chase him," Thor admitted, rough. Dumbledore nodded, like he already knew. "And you didn't." Thor's voice came quiet. "Because children were watching." Harry heard that, and felt something in his chest loosen and tighten at the same time. For the first time in a long time, Harry believed something simple, that not all power was meant to control. Some power was meant to stand in the way. In the days after, the castle changed again. Not back to normal, but into something new. Teachers set patrols that didn't rely on Umbridge's permission. The Order moved in and out more quietly. Students stopped whispering, "Thunder thing," and started saying, "Thor," because they'd heard it shouted in the hall, and the name had become real. Umbridge tried to claim victory, of course. She called meetings. She wrote new decrees. She ordered inspections. But even she looked paler now, because she had seen Death Eaters inside the school, and she had seen that her paper didn't stop them. The next decree she posted had a shaking line at the bottom, like her hand had trembled. Thor didn't tear that one down. He didn't need to. Nobody looked at it. The school had learned which rules mattered, and which ones were just noise. That night, Thor stood alone on the astronomy tower. Snow drifted in quiet flakes. The wind was cold, but clean. Harry found him there. No cloak this time. No sneaking. He climbed the stairs like a person who belonged in his own school, even when the school was at war. Thor didn't turn when Harry approached. He sensed him anyway. Harry stood beside him, looking out over the grounds. The forest was black. The lake was a dark mirror. Harry's voice came small in the open air. "He was talking to you." Thor's voice was quiet. "Yes," Harry swallowed. "About your family." Thor's jaw tightened. "Yes," Harry hesitated. "I'm sorry." Thor finally looked at him. His eyes were bright with something heavy. "Do not be sorry for what you did not take," Thor said. Harry stared. "What?" Thor turned back to the sky. "Loss is like weather. It comes. You do not deserve it. You do not earn it. It simply comes." Harry understood that. He didn't like it, but he understood it. Thor's voice dropped lower. "He tried to make me choose." Harry's throat tightened. "And you did." Thor nodded once. "Yes." Harry waited. Thor didn't talk for a moment. He seemed to be listening to the wind, like it carried memories. Then Thor said, "In my world, people call me a god." Harry glanced at him. "You are?" Thor's mouth tightened. "That word makes people stop seeing the damage." Harry didn't answer, because he didn't know how. Thor continued, quiet and steady. "I have made choices that cost lives. I have charged into fights because it felt right. I have broken things I should have protected." He looked down at the dark grounds. "Here, the enemy wanted me to do that again." Harry's scar prickled faintly, but it didn't burn. It felt like a reminder, not a warning. Harry said softly, "He wanted you to look like him." Thor nodded. "Yes." Harry's voice shook a little. "You didn't." Thor's gaze moved to Harry again, and this time it softened just slightly. "I did not," Thor said, "because you reminded me what he does." Harry frowned. "Me?" Thor's voice stayed calm. "You are hunted, and you still stand. You are afraid, and you still fight. That is not small." Harry looked away, embarrassed and overwhelmed. Thor's mouth twitched. "Do not make that face. It is an honorable truth." Harry snorted quietly despite himself. "You and your honor." Thor looked offended for half a second. Then he sighed. "It is how I understand the world," Thor said. "But your world teaches different lessons." Harry asked, "Like what?" Thor's eyes went to the castle behind them, warm lights and windows, stone that held secrets. "Power is not the hardest part," Thor said. "Restraint is." Harry's throat tightened again. He thought of all the times he wanted to scream, to break things, to throw spells without thinking. He thought of how easy it would be to become cruel if you decided the world owed you. He understood what Thor meant. Down below, a few students crossed the courtyard under a teacher's watch, moving like shadows. Hogwarts was still Hogwarts, but it was also a fortress now. A fortress with a thunder god on the roof. Thor lifted his hand slightly. The clouds above the tower shifted, not violently, not like a storm gathering for war. Just a small movement, like the sky was adjusting a blanket. A soft rumble rolled far off, gentle and controlled. Harry watched it and felt something rare, a tiny bit of peace, Thor spoke again, voice low. I cannot leave yet. Harry's chest tightened. Because of the crack. Thor nodded. And because of what he will do if I do. Harry didn't argue. He knew what it felt like to be stuck in a role you didn't choose. Harry asked quietly, So, what now? Thor looked out at the dark horizon. His answer was simple. We hold, Thor said. We protect. We learn. And when he reaches again, we are ready. Harry nodded. Below them, the castle stood firm. Above them, the sky rumbled softly, like a promise kept on purpose. And somewhere far away, in a hidden place, Voldemort listened to the new shape of fear. Not fear of paper. Not fear of rules. Fear of a storm that had learned to stand still. He did not smile as wide as before, but he did smile, because the thread was still there. And he had time. And time, Voldemort believed, always broke even the strongest walls. But tonight, on the astronomy tower, Thor Odinson did not feel like a wall. He felt like a shield. And Hogwarts, for the first time in weeks, felt like it could breathe.